Hey, brothers, Shabbat Shalom. Wanted to tell y'all something incredible today. Today's Torah portion involves the Yom Kippur sacrifice, the two goat offering to to the Father. And you won't believe how incredible it is. Only God could have put something together. I get so excited telling people about this. Matter of fact, yesterday I had a taxi ride back from the airport, and the guy just mentioned that he's a minister, and so I got to tell him all about it too. It's so awesome. But forever I have loved studying and debating and apologetics and stuff, and I considered the prophecies of the Messiah in the Old Testament as awesome proof that Jesus was a Messiah. But the way that he fulfilled 3 Old Testament sacrifices, Passover, most Christians, believers know that he was a Passover lamb slain for us, but also Yom Kippur, the Day of Atonement, and the red heifer sacrifice. He perfectly fulfilled the requirements for these 3 sacrifices in one death. Only God could have done this. It's incredible. But to me, even Passover is awesome. They brought a lamb into the house on the 10th day of the month. And then for 4 days, they guarded that little bitty lamb and tested it to make sure it's perfect. And on the 14th day, 4 days later, if that lamb was perfect, then they slayed that before sundown on Passover. Our Messiah, Yeshua, he enters Jerusalem, his father's house, on the 10th day of the month, Sunday, and is tested and by everybody, Pharisees, scribes. They were looking for a problem, and they couldn't find one. And on the 14th day, 4 days later, Thursday afternoon, Pontius Pilate says, "I find no fault with this perfect lamb." Woohoo! It's awesome. But here's Yom Kippur. I have to get to the red heifer on a separate video, but it's equally as awesome. But on Yom Kippur, the holiest day of the year for Israel, what they would do is they would bring out, and I want to make a note here, that what happened on Yom Kippur, that sacrifice was the only time there was forgiveness for purposeful, willful sin in somebody's life. And that all the other sacrifices didn't cover a willful, purposeful sin. Only on Yom Kippur was there forgiveness of willful sin. So on Yom Kippur, they would bring 2 goats out. These goats, we know they were identical to look at, and they cost equal amount. What they would do is one of these goats would be sacrificed to God. The other goat, the priest would put his hands on the goat and announce the sins of Israel. I'm sure it took an hour or 2 to announce them all, because it's a lot. And then it says a man would walk that goat out of the city, a free goat. That's where we get the term scapegoat from, if you've ever heard that. So you're with me. On Yom Kippur, holiest day of the year for Israel, there was a sacrifice for the sins of Israel as a nation, not just an individual. It involved 2 goats. One goat was sacrificed to God. The other goat, the sins of Israel were put on this goat, and he walked out of the city. Oh, brothers, they did this for 1,500 years before Jesus came. And I want to tell you how awesome our God is, as if you didn't already know. Only God could have done what he did on that Passover week that our Messiah died. If you remember, when Jesus was standing with Pontius Pilate, he said, he had a tradition of letting somebody go on Passover. He said, bring out somebody. Who did they say? I'm giving you a second to think. Barabbas, if you remember. And Barabbas, you think of him as an evil man, but he was not evil. Only God could have put a man like Barabbas in prison that week. He was probably about to die in a day or 2 himself for what he had done. But only God could have done it. It says Barabbas, and I'm going to show you how Jesus and Barabbas were these identical goats. It's beautiful. It says Barabbas was a murderer, but he wasn't your standard murder somebody and steal your money. It says he was a zealot. A zealot was someone that loved Israel with their whole heart and hated that Romans had control of the country. He was a killer of Romans, a savior of Israel, too. He was just using the sword to do it. So you've got 2 saviors of Israel standing there. And being a killer of Romans, in a Roman prison. I guarantee you the guards beat him and mistreated him since he was going to die anyway. And so from a distance, when they're up there with Pontius Pilate, you probably can't tell them apart. You know, that's speculation, but it makes sense that they would have mistreated Barabbas just like they mistreated Jesus. So you can't tell them apart from a distance. So you've got two saviors of Israel, both of them bloody. Here's where it gets awesome. Brothers, they left Barabbas's first name out of the Bible. They left it out of the Bible. Guess what it was? You're not going to believe it. His name was Yeshua. When you Google Barabbas, it'll tell you, yes, it was known that his name was Yeshua, but they didn't want to be writing about two men with a first name, same first name, and they didn't like that he had the same name as our Messiah, so they just started going by his last name. But it was by design. He was that identical goat. So you've got two saviors of Israel standing there, both of them bloody. You probably can't tell them apart from a distance. Both of them named Yeshua, and it keeps getting better. Guess Barabbas is actually a Hebrew last name. Guess what it means? Only God, brothers. There's a movie here we watched, and the whole thing is in Hebrew. It's called The Passion of the Christ. I don't know if you saw it, but in The Passion of the Christ, everybody's speaking Hebrew, and underneath it says the English. Well, the high priest in the movie looks at Pontius Pilate and says, "Give us Bar-Abba, 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 Bar, son of Abba, the Father." So you've got two Yeshuas, sons of the Father, standing there. Both of them saviors of Israel. Both of them bloody. You can't tell them apart from a distance. And what do? They do the same thing that they've done for 1,500 years, brothers. They kill the goat without sin, our Messiah, and they walk the sinful goat out, Barabbas, out of the city. God is beyond our thinking. He sees all of time. He's unbelievable. And we are going to get to see him with our own eyes. And through obedience, he's going to give us an abundant entrance into his kingdom. So anyway, I just wanted to bless y'all with that story. Isn't that incredible? So after you watch this video, let me know what you think. It's just beautiful. Shabbat shalom, brothers. Bye.